Donald Trump is sharpening his attacks against one of his likely opponents for the GOP nomination, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Even as prosecutors in New York indicate that they are closer than ever to indicting Trump. And members of a Georgia grand jury say their investigation of Trump could be massive. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. Trump and DeSantis have both been hitting the campaign trail, even though DeSantis has not officially announced that he's running yet. But, I mean, you can tell he's running. For one thing, he seems to be wearing suits that actually fit him now instead of whatever the hell's going on here. He looks like he's cheating in a chess tournament. Then look, I get it. We've all been there. You got a formal event, you forget to buy a suit, you rifle through your closet at the last minute, you find an old jacket that doesn't fit anymore, and you end up looking like a cat standing on its hind legs. Been there. But DeSantis gearing up for a run also means he's attracted the bloodshot eye of Sauron, his main rival, Donald Trump, who's been attacking DeSantis on the campaign trail and elsewhere. In fact, Trump posted a pretty remarkable video this week where he basically said DeSantis was a failure, and the only reason people like Florida is because it's sunny there.
For those of you that didn't notice, Florida was doing great long before Ron DeSantis got there. People are fleeing from New York to Florida and other places because of high taxes and out-of-control crime. It's really bad. Not because of the governor. Thank you, Mr. President, for doing that. But it's not because of the governor. Florida was doing fantastically. You had a governor named Rick Scott who did a very good job. Even Charlie Crist, a Democrat, did a good job, and he had very good numbers. Sunshine and ocean are very alluring.
He sounds like a 60s radical explaining how two women tricked him into joining a cult. Sunshine and ocean were very alluring, man. They told me my chakras aligned with theirs. Next thing I knew, my bank account was empty and I was scrubbing the Maharishi's toilet. Still, man, I wouldn't trade those times for anything. Can't believe I'm saying this, but I agree with Donald Trump. Everything people like about Florida was in place before Ron DeSantis. He didn't do something magical to suddenly convince people they should move to a warmer climate with beaches, golf courses, theme parks, low taxes, alligators on meth. If you think people living in New York were saying, there's too many books around here, I want to go to a state where there's less to read. But that video is such a funny preview of how Trump is going to tear into all of his opponents. He's already so mad at DeSantis, he's praising the former governor of Florida, Charlie Crist, for doing a better job than DeSantis. Soon Trump's going to be so desperate to attack his fellow Republicans, he's going to endorse Obama. You know where else has sunshine and ocean? Hawaii, home to my good friend Barack Obama. He was born there. He was born in Hawaii. He has the birth certificate and everything. I've seen it. Beautiful birth certificate. Beautiful. Gold leaf. Held it in my hands. Obama. Great man, good at basketball. He tried to teach poor Ron how to shoot a three-pointer. But Ron couldn't raise his arms above his head. So sad. So sad. There's plenty more to attack DeSantis on because, as we've said before, DeSantis is a weird guy, but not as weird as Trump, which is his main problem. If you're a GOP voter who likes weird, Trump's your guy. But if you like normal, DeSantis is a little too weird. He stands weird. He wears those little weird white boots. And now there's this new story about his weird eating habits. He would sit in meetings and eat in front of people, a former DeSantis staffer told the Daily Beast, always like a starving animal who has never eaten before, getting everywhere. During a private plane trip from Tallahassee to Washington, D.C. in March of 2019, DeSantis enjoyed a chocolate pudding dessert by eating it with 3 of his fingers. You ate pudding with your fingers? That's not very DeSanitary. You don't get to use your fingers to eat pudding. Here are the rules. If you have pudding, but you don't have a spoon, then you don't have pudding. I've never thought I'd say this about anyone, but you should eat more like Donald Trump. If you were on a plane next to a guy who was finger blasting Swiss Miss and asked to move and the flight attendant said, the only open seat's next to a dude eating KFC with a knife and fork, you'd say, yeah, I guess in this case it beats the pudding dude. So there's a lot of material for Trump to work with. The only thing Trump hasn't nailed down yet is the nickname. I mean, I took Ron DeSanitary, so that one's gone. Sorry, dude. Trump's been calling him Ron DeSanctimonious, which doesn't exactly roll right off the tongue. So then he shortens it He shortens to sanctimonious to make it easier to say.
Florida was doing great long before Ron DeSantis got there. So just remember, Florida was doing really well long before Ron DeSantis got there.
So he shortens sanctimonious to sanctus. Makes total sense. Smart people always shorten long words like that. I remember when I got my appendix looked at, the doctor came in and said, all right, looks like we're gonna have to do a little appendy, but don't worry, if anything happens, we'll just shock you with tafibis. I don't know if he was a good doctor or not, because I didn't stay. So Trump's decided to go after DeSantis before DeSantis even gets in the race, and the most important media organization in the conservative movement, Fox News, seems torn about it. On the one hand, you have hosts like Brian Kilmeade who are cozying up to DeSantis, but also seem impressed by what they claim is Trump's ability to stay on message after a run of bad press.
He also is on a bit of a roll since he went and visited East Palestine, stopped having lunch with white supremacists, and has got a very disciplined message.
Yeah, I can't argue with the logic. It's like saying Hannibal Lecter has been looking svelte since he stopped eating people. Also, I love that they're still waiting all these years later for a more disciplined Donald Trump to magically appear. The man's 76. 76-year-olds don't suddenly change unless they start taking Cialis. You know, after he started taking Cialis, Grandpa bought a fedora and joined a band. But of course, the big question looming over the GOP primary is whether Trump will get indicted. He's facing multiple investigations in various jurisdictions at this point, including state and federal investigations of his attempt to overturn the 2020 election. And I'm as tired as anyone of hearing the probe is intensifying and the walls are closing in on Trump's. It's like waiting around for Sam and Diane to finally kiss, or, you know, a better reference for people under 50. But in New York, prosecutors are looking into Trump's hush money payments from 2016, and that case might be the closest to an actual indictment.
Donald Trump's former attorney, Michael Cohen, making his second appearance tomorrow before a New York grand jury. He's the key witness in a case investigating a hush money payment to adult film star Stormy Daniels. That payment made just days before the 2016 election. Prosecutors handling the case are signaling that a criminal indictment for Trump could be coming soon. Man, it would be wild if that's the thing that brought Trump down. The guy was impeached twice, colluded with one foreign country, tried to extort another country to interfere in a presidential election on his behalf, and then fomented a violent coup to stay in power. But the thing that could finally sink him is paying off a porn star not to tell everyone about his weird penis when everyone already assumed it looked weird. Talk about throwing bad money after good. But Trump apparently has a new lawyer to handle this case, a guy whose real name is Joe Tacopina. I did not make that up. I certainly would never use it as a joke. Like if someone asked me what Stormy Daniels said about Trump, I would never say, he's got a little Tacopina. I wouldn't do that. But Tacopina went on MSNBC this week to defend Trump's lie that he didn't know about the hush payment with Stormy Daniels, and the interview got contentious.
One of the top trial attorneys out of New York, Joe Tacopina, is defending Donald Trump. And our guest right now, live on the beat, is Trump defense lawyer Joe Tacopina. If all of what you say is true,
it is,
then why was Trump hiding it and lying about it at the time? And I'll play that for your response. Mm-hmm. He lied about it. We all know that. Take a look. Take a look.
Let's see.
Mr. President, did you know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels? Then why did Michael Cohen make it if there was no truth or allegation?
You have to ask Michael Cohen. Michael's my attorney, and you'll have to ask Michael.
Ari, that's what you're going to consider a lie. A lie to me is something material under oath in a proceeding.
Well, I didn't say perjury. I said a lie.
Yeah, but that's not a lie. That's
not a lie?
Here's why it's not a lie.
That's not a lie?
Here's why it's not a lie.
Did you know about this?
Let me answer.
Did you know about this? No, I don't.
No, we don't need that.
Hey, oh, what's with the paper? Hey, I thought we were friends. Come on, we don't need that. You take out paper, I gotta take out scissors. Next thing you know, you're eating your pudding with only 2 fingers. As we mentioned, there are other investigations of Trump, including one in Georgia where prosecutors are investigating Trump's attempt to interfere in the vote count and are weighing whether to bring charges. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution recently spoke to anonymous members of the grand jury who said the findings were potentially explosive. One juror said if every person in America knew every single word of information we knew, this country would not be divided as it is right now. And another said a lot's going to come out sooner or later, and it's going to be massive. It's going to be massive. That is quite the tease. When I read that, I was so shocked I stood up straight like Ron DeSantis. Now, if all that's true, then I personally feel like it might be better to charge the guy who fomented a violent coup to overthrow American democracy with coup stuff first, instead of the hush money stuff. I'm not saying Trump shouldn't face legal consequences in that case, too. I just think it might be better for democracy if we held Trump accountable for the coup than if we charged him for paying someone not to talk about his little
Tacopina.
This has been a closer look.